Hey, Chris Liepe here with special guest Ian Thornley from the band Big Wreck. Thank you so much for being here, Ian.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're talking about warming up, specifically for voices that might be initially lower that have to sing lots of high stuff, which is what you are. And I think a lot of times baritone singers, they when they warm up, they tend to warm up like they're pushing their range. I got to hit these notes. I better warm up so I can eventually hit that note. But that's not how you approach things. And so I'd love to get your perspective and a little bit of a backstory on how you wound up warming up like you warm up.
Well, it's kind of a long story because I the first time I'd even heard of somebody warming up, I think our first manager was like, "How come you don't warm up your voice?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" Like it just didn't dawn on me that that's something that you would do. And back then, of course, we were all smoking darts and, slamming beers before the show. It was like, we were kids.
Yeah.
And dumb ones at that. But it was Miles. Like I said before, we did a lot of touring with his first band, the Mayfield Four.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I'd seen somebody warming up. And I had to ask, I asked Zia, the drummer, I was like, what's Miles doing in the band?
Uh-huh.
At first it was like he'd disappear, we'd be hanging out, and then he'd disappear before they go on. 45 minutes before they go on, or an hour. And I was like, where'd he go? And I remember coming off the bus at one point and seeing him, and they were in a van, I think. Maybe we were in a van too. But I remember coming from either the van or the bus, going back into the venue and seeing him in the passenger seat of the van. And I heard noise coming from him. And he was warming up. And then of course you see what he can do on stage. I'm like, okay, there's something to this. And I think he has a naturally higher range than I do. Mm-hmm. And a cleaner sound naturally than mine. But His control is mind blowing, and his tone, and it's just, it was such another level that I was like, I need to figure out what he's doing. Yeah. And of course we became fast friends, as soon as we started playing together. Mm-hmm. So he was very, very, open with me and helpful. But it was just all kinds of different things. And like I said, he gave me a sheet of his sort of warm-up routine. And I remember messing around with it a little bit, but it's not like he sat with me and did it.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of those. It was just like, oh, okay, well, I'll try this. And of course you do it once or twice. And then, your drummer's like, you sound like an idiot. If somebody says something off and you're just like, yeah, this is stupid. Uh-huh. It would, and of course, and you feel like that because you do make some pretty silly noises. But once I got past all that, I started to really try out different things. Some nights I would, it was trial and error. Some nights I was like, wow, that was really there. Like that high stuff was really clear and full. And, it didn't sound like, and I wouldn't know how to articulate it then, almost worse than I am now. But
yeah.
Sometimes high notes could sound like you're pulling them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like when you don't bring that shit with you. Just go up there. That's how I would think about it in my head.
Okay.
And bridging certain things where there's the bridge from wherever your bridges are, and how to smooth those over so you can have a smooth transition from way up to way down. I wouldn't know I just would know the feeling when it was like, okay, this is how it should be. So I have a routine that can last for quite a while, and I tend to take a long time.
About how long?
Nowadays, I have to warm up my hands as well.
Sure, right.
So it'll take a while. I'll sort of adopt the back lounge of the bus for an hour and a half before the show, and just sort of, just start getting my hands ready. start kind of stretching things out, and then vocally I'll do the same thing, like start really easy and essentially just stretching like you would, like if you were just stretching a muscle. And just with lip rolls, just running scales or arpeggios with lip rolls, and it will change night to night depending on how things are feeling, and again, if I'm stuffy at all. So yeah, there's a lot of lip rolls and a lot of different vowels, and there's some of the what Miles calls the bel canto technique, where you're shaping vowels and stuff like that. I'll mess with some of that. I'll definitely work on some falsetto, just strictly falsetto, and actually bringing falsetto down. But for the most part, what I'm looking for is for things to feel like I've stretched, for things to feel loose and easy, and so that I can go from a higher note and just glide over where the bridges would be, and there's no gaps. There's no shift of gears. It's all the same, just one straight line from low to high. And then I sometimes, even more so nowadays, but right before we go on, a few minutes before we go on, I'll blast a note or two up there just to make sure that the turbo is engaged.
Right.
And you know what I mean? Like that sort of the distortion or compression or whatever it is that, the harder notes, just to make sure that they're available. I'll stretch, and then sort of blast a few up there, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. And then a lot of the rest of it is really just light scales and arpeggios and licks, and a lot of head voice stuff.
So I want to touch on something that you said earlier. Your focus early on is feeling things out and doing things that you would never sing in a song, making noises that your drummer says are stupid, those sorts of things. But it sounds like your focus is first of all clean, but also a sort of a top-down approach. That's where you're trying to go from high in your falsetto, and then bridging those gaps, and then working lower. And that warming up that way, this top-down, helps you go the other direction, as opposed to being, kind of warming up in your chest voice a ton, and then just trying to push higher and higher.
That's never worked for me. Like the first thing that I'll do is I'll start with I'll start with here, which is an F sharp for me, but I guess it'd be an F for everybody else. And I'll start there, and I'll start with a simple scale up, just doing lip rolls from this one to this one. Okay. And then I'll go up chromatically, like really, really easy. And trying to keep in mind that sort of yawn feeling. Yeah. Like the Dumbo kind of. Right. Trying to make sure all that, and then I'll just go up the scale and an arpeggio or a scale, and then just keep going up chromatically, and I'll usually end up an octave up, and then I'll go down in whole steps till I get it as low as I can.
What if you don't hit the note? When you're doing this, because you are going lower to higher in this area and unlocking that transition up into your head voice, but you're not pushing for those high notes. You're allowing yourself to bridge and go up and hit those however you do.
That's a key, and that's something that's going through my head constantly: is don't push, don't reach, just hit it. Just go, just hit the note. For me, that's a key, and that's something I'll do on tour as soon as I get up, when I'm in the shower, in no particular key, just nice and easy lip rolls. And I always find that sort of sets my voice for the day. It'll set my voice in a good spot. No matter what kind of shape I'm in or what damage I did to it on the gig before, whatever I have access to is going to be available to me. If I can, the more lip rolls I can do, and I've even got the guys hooked on it, through the years, because it's just a very good you can't damage your voice while you're doing lip rolls. That's what I heard. So, and it's always been that's my beginning. You know, that's where I start. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff that I start unlocking with, like, you know, the sort of mixed voice and you know, the sort of the cat sounds, as you call them, those, you know, throwing those, just making sure that stuff's engaged and as high as I, you know, because there's different shapes to different vowels in the very high register, like sort of high D, high E over high C, like those notes. Yeah, and I'll mess with that, and that tends to loosen things up in my face, I think.
So you start really with,
but it feels like it's doing something in here and
absolutely
helping me sort of hone in on the note. And if I can do it without much effort, then I'm doing it right, you know.
So you start with the lip rolls and with you know, no goals, just experiencing what your voice is doing today, that kind of thing, and then you move to the cat sounds and with different vowels. So you're simultaneously working on making cat sounds and then placing different vowels while you're doing the cat sounds. That would be maybe stage 2 of your warm up.
If I had to look at it that way, yeah. And there is a lot of, like, you know, especially if you're not feeling 100% and you're doing like 4 in a row. You know, my falsetto is also a good gauge of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Feeling just how that feels and the tone of it. And how easy it is, how easily it comes to falsetto. And I mean, like, strictly the sort of smoky owl falsetto.
Right.
And that, you know, once I'm sort of getting stretched out, and it depends. If I feel I need more work here, it feels kind of tight. And then I'll just start doing things really quietly with a lot of ridiculous vibrato. Just sort of moving my larynx and stuff like that, just sort of getting things loose.
Yeah. So with the moving of your larynx, it's like you're triggering the yawn and then going back, that kind of, that sort of
that kind of thing. Ridiculous.
Imitating a ghost.
Yeah. But that it tends to, like, if I'm like, if things are feeling tight, as opposed to like the tone's there, but it feels tight. Yeah, things like that will just sort of, and that's probably psychosomatic. It's probably just sort of, but yeah, and then a lot of turning, like I'll take falsetto up and then turn it into a sort of cat sound, if you will.
Yeah.
From that, where they're turning it from falsetto into mix.
Yeah.
So where you're applying that, and I'll do that a few times just to see how different it is.
Like this kind of sound, right? Like where you're going. That's
exactly that. Yeah. And yeah, and just to see how different it is and how same it is going back and forth, just to gauge where things are at.
Cool.
And I've been guilty of warming up too much. You know, that started to happen on one tour, because I was singing great. I was having great nights after great nights. And I was like, this is awesome. Let's make it 2 hours. I think it was Brian's like, dude, I think you're overdoing it. Because by the end of the show, I was wiped. So, you know, there is a balance. I would say you probably good with a half hour of concentrated sort of warm up. Whereas I sort of do it in groups and gently over about an hour and a half. Because like I said, I got to get my hands ready and, you know, I got to stretch out my back.
Well, you've kind of got this nice thing where you might warm up your voice for a little bit and then you might let it cool and then play guitar for a little bit.
Good balls.
Yeah, that's cool. So because it keeps you from getting into this mode of like grinding on your voice before a show because you have other things to worry about, or not worry about, but other things to warm up.
Yeah. What would you say? Like it's the same thing with my hands. Like I have certain sort of touchstones where I'm like, okay, well that's good to go. Let's work on the right hand now. And there's certain sort of tempos, certain things I want to achieve. And I know that I'm loose and I'm ready. Okay, am I doing that? Am I tensing up my elbow when I do that? Or is it just nice and tight and loose and clean and relaxed? It's the same thing with the voice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you want anyway. There have been gigs where it's like, there was a border crossing before, and it's like, well, we got held up at the border and we missed the first 10 minutes of our set time.
Oh, wow.
You get out of the car and you get on stage and, you don't really get to warm up then, but sometimes those turn out to be great because you're already out of your head.
Sure. Right. So if phase one is the lip rolls and the real careful bridging the gap stuff, and then phase two is introducing some mixed sounds and going from head voice into the cat and experimenting with different vowels with that.
Yeah, I would start even before I start doing any of the mixed stuff. I'll do more of the different vowels and just doing arpeggios up and down, but not going too high. Just keeping it really comfortable.
That's good.
The vowels. I feel like it's there. I might go back to the lip rolls and instead of an F sharp, I'll go up to a G or a G sharp. I'll go higher and stretch it, make sure I'm not pushing or reaching for notes, and just stretching and stretching, and then eventually it is. I start introducing that that hardcore, but way up here.
Yeah,
and then bringing it down, and then I'll go from falsettos, which I'll go as low as I can in falsetto, and I'll come back up, and then I like to do falsetto into mix. It's just something I've done for the past 15 years or 10 years or whatever.
I like to do that too.
Just to see where I'm at, it's a good gauge of, but sometimes the falsetto is really shoddy, but the mix is holding on.
Isn't that weird?
That it's going to be one of those nights where the intimate parts are not going to be quite as intimate, maybe. Or my falsetto is just a little smokier and burnt sounding than it normally is. So you just sort of a lot of it is about assessment.
Yes.
You see where you're at. See what I've got. What have I got tonight?
So one of the things you said about when you start working with vowels, you are working in an intentionally more limited range.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really key thing to think about in warming up, because the vowels, if you simultaneously use vowels while you're feeling out the unlocking of your daily high range, you could really tense up.
Especially with nays, like that's a scary one. That's not a lot of fun. Like N's and M's they can get kind of weird.
Yes.
Way up high.
Yeah. And
but
S's.
I definitely like it. That stuff is more about that stuff's more about the placement for me. And really not how high can I go or how low can I go. It's more about just the placement of the different sounds.
Key.
And getting them all to sound forward and getting them all to sound like they're, like I'm projecting it.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for talking about warming up and for hanging with me this afternoon. Any final thoughts on warming up?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's probably one of the reasons I've been able to do what I do for a living for this long. As far as singing goes, and maintenance from night to night to night, it's one of the more important things that you can do, which is I overlooked the first early part of my career, but something I'm religious about now. It's really important.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ian. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.